Hey guys, what's going on? Apologies that this video took so long, but I figured um, might as well just get out and do one. So I looked at the poll, and it looks like most people wanted me to talk about programming considerations and things related to writing exercise prescriptions and training programs and that sort of thing, because obviously you guys just want to steal all my secrets so you don't need me anymore. So I figured, okay, why not? So I wanted to pick a nice simple topic to start with, and I went with one that a lot of people have been asking me about lately, and so that is whether to AMRAP or not. So if ever you were wondering why you had a 3 plus, at a certain time of the year versus not, or when you're writing your own training programs for yourself or for other people, my thoughts on when AMRAPs are appropriate. So let's get into it. I got kind of my notes here on when and when not to use them. So let's start with when to use them, in which situations. First of all, further away from competition, I think, is a safe bet. One, with a little bit, they work better, I think, in the sort of lighter weight, higher rep range area. And so obviously that's going to naturally be further away from a competition. And also, the set itself, if the load is a little bit lighter than maximal, is going to be a pretty serious hypertrophy stimulus, which is something that you're seeking at that time of the year anyway. So that's one. For people who have a block or a mental barrier, and that barrier is mental, it's within their mind. So maybe they have a number that they're afraid of hitting. Let's say, for example, 405 is something that mentally you just can't hit, even though you've hit 395 a million times for a single, just never could hit 405. So if you have a mental block, I think an AMRAP is an appropriate thing to do, because if you can show someone who is scared of 405 that they can hit 385 for 3 or 4, it's like suddenly that mental block is gone. So I think that's a very strong case to use those. Another one, and obviously this is part of why you would use it anyway, aside from just the hypertrophy stimulus, but it's as a gauge of strength. So knowing where your client or your athlete is at strength-wise at that particular time, because when you're taking a set to failure, you can backwards calculate, okay, you got 7 reps at this weight, this is what I can project your 1 rep max to be. So sparingly, I think that's a justified use of AMRAPs for sure, just kind of knowing where people's strength levels are at. They're also useful if you're coaching someone and this person is really like a grinder, like they can just pull reps out of nowhere, or where their RPE might otherwise be a little bit deceiving, like they hit 1 rep and you're like, I don't know, and then they have like 6 more because that's just the way they are. AMRAPs are pretty useful for that. And then the last one is just for people who are naturally better at doing reps than they are at singles, for whatever reason. So that's when, and my thoughts on when not to use them so much closer to a competition would be number 1. Partly because, getting closer and closer to competition, we want to replicate the sport as best we can. The sport is just 1 rep, so I'd rather train 1 rep or maybe low reps leading into a meet versus getting as many as you can, which is really not the point of competition. Also, the risk reward, like the fatigue you get out of doing an AMRAP, is going to be maybe not something you need going into meet prep, which is stressful enough already. And then people who are better at singles or low reps versus higher reps, you might be more accurate just having them do submaximal singles, gauging the RPE or the bar velocity if that's something you have access to, instead of having them do AMRAPs, which they're going to struggle with because they're just not good at reps. You know what I mean? Same sort of goes for people where conditioning is the limiting factor. Like they're strong enough to hit, whatever it is, 315 for 10, but they're not getting more than 6 because they're out of breath. You know what I mean? And that's exercise dependent too, to some extent. And then for people whose blocks or mental plateaus, when they aren't mental and they're actually technical, AMRAPs maybe not be the way to go, and let me tell you why I think that is. And it's because some people, their technique changes as the weight increases. So the closer we get to 1 rep max, like their technique might change. So in the lower reps, when they're doing AMRAPs, they might fall into this groove. Their technique might be pretty good, or at least might serve them very well for that set of 8. You know, if it's a different technique than when they're doing their singles, my argument would be that it's not going to carry over as well. You know, maybe it'll carry over better than some other things, but compared to just doing, you know, the singles, the low rep submaximal stuff, not the same. So for people who have a technical issue that's keeping them from hitting their PR, and it's not mental and it's not a strength thing, probably not a good time to use an AMRAP. And then the last one is just when you can accurately gauge someone else's RPE. So when you become competent enough, let's say, to look at someone's set and say, yeah, they probably had one more. And if you know them well enough, you know, because like I said, there's some people where it's very deceiving. But if you're confident in yourself and you're confident with how well you know them and how they lift, and you don't need to fatigue them by doing an AMRAP, then you don't need to. So let me know what you guys thought of that, and I'd love to make some more of these videos in the future. Thanks.